The raw metallic taste of betrayal filled my mouth sharper than any scream could be. My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled with the car door handle, desperate to escape the suffocating closeness of it all. But I was frozen, trapped by the sight of him. Ryan. My husband. His head tilted back, lips locked with hers, right there in our car, in the sterile glare of the parking garage lights. She was so young, impossibly so, a blur of blonde hair and cheap perfume. My breath caught a silent, primal roar trapped in my throat, vibrating against my ribs, a sound that never escaped my lips, but echoed endlessly within the confines of my own skull. I saw her hand, slender and pale, reach up to cup his jaw, a gesture of intimacy so profound, it scorched my eyes. Then he pulled away, his eyes snapping to mine, a flicker of panic replaced almost instantly by that familiar, condescending calm. Emily, darling, you're imagining things. The stress, your age, it's getting to you. You need help. The words were a soft, venomous hiss, precisely aimed, designed to dismantle me. And just like that, my reality began to crumble, piece by agonizing piece. My world shattered not with a sudden explosion, but with the slow, insidious crack of a foundation, giving way, dragging me down into a cold, terrifying abyss. He was trying to steal my mind, to erase me. The air was thick with the scent of burning rubber, and a lie so monumental it choked me. This wasn't happening, but it was, and I couldn't breathe. The days that followed were a blur of disorienting pain, a waking nightmare, where every shadow seemed to twist into Ryan's smirking face. The moment I confronted him, my voice a trembling wire, barely audible, even to myself, he launched into his calculated performance. He didn't deny. He didn't apologize. He simply looked at me with an expression of profound pity, as if I were a fragile, deluded creature. Emily, I'm genuinely concerned. You've been so fragile lately. Remember how you insisted we buy those new security cameras because you swore someone was watching the house? Or that time you misplaced your phone and were convinced I'd hidden it? It's all adding up, darling. These aren't normal thoughts. His words, laced with fake concern, were a verbal anesthetic meant to numb me into submission, while simultaneously twisting the knife. He spoke of patterns and nervous instability, conjuring a fabricated medical history out of thin air, weaving it into a narrative so convincing it almost made me doubt my own sanity. He'd even pulled out documents, flimsy printouts I later realized were hastily cobbled together, designed to mimic psychological assessments, complete with vague diagnoses that hinted at paranoia and delusion. I've been talking to a specialist, Emily. He'd said, his voice dripping with faux compassion. Just for your well-being. They agree that you need intervention. My head spun. Was it true? Was I truly losing my mind? He was so plausible, so calm, so rational. The man I had loved, shared a life with, was meticulously building a case against me, using my pain as a weapon. He wanted to strip me of my sanity, to make me doubt my own perceptions, and more importantly, to seize full custody of our child, to erase me from their life as easily as he was erasing me from his. The fear was a cold, paralyzing hand around my heart. The world around me, once so familiar and solid, began to crumble with terrifying speed. Ryan's family, once so welcoming, so effusive in their praise of their perfect daughter-in-law, now looked at me with a detached pity, their eyes mirroring Ryan's narrative. His mother, a woman who had once treated me like her own, clutched her pearls, whispering about my delicate state. His sisters, once my confidants, now averted their gazes, their hushed conversations dying the moment I entered the room. They were swayed by his carefully constructed lies, by the illusion of my madness, by the perfect facade he presented to the world. Friends. People I had known for years, people I had shared countless meals and confidences with, distanced themselves. Text messages went unanswered. Invitations stopped coming. They were unwilling to get caught in the crossfire, or perhaps simply believed Ryan's version of events, finding it easier to accept the narrative of the unstable wife than to challenge the golden boy. I was utterly, terrifyingly isolated, a pariah in my own life. My cries for help were dismissed as the ramblings of a mad woman. My pleas for understanding met with cold stares and averted gazes. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who had once publicly shamed another now found herself publicly shamed, her reputation in tatters, her very sanity questioned. I felt a suffocating sense of loneliness, a raw wound of betrayal that seeped into every corner of my existence. The silence in my once bustling home became a deafening roar. Every mirror reflected a stranger, a hollow-eyed woman teetering on the brink. In the depths of my despair, drowning in a sea of alcohol and self-pity, my mind a swirling vortex of confusion and pain, I stumbled out into the cold night. The city lights blurred through my tear-filled eyes, the cold air doing little to clear the haze in my head. I walked aimlessly until my feet, guided by some subconscious urge, led me to Jamal's small apartment. The thought was desperate, chaotic. I needed solace, comfort, perhaps even a desperate escape, a temporary oblivion from the suffocating pain. I craved connection, any connection in a fleeting moment of warmth in the freezing desolation of my life. My heart ached with a physical intensity, a crushing weight that made breathing difficult. When he opened the door, his face clouded with instant concern, I almost collapsed into him. My body craved his warmth, his presence, anything to fill the cavernous void in my chest. I leaned into him, seeking a closeness that was both physical and emotional, a desperate plea for someone, anyone to simply hold me. A fleeting, dark thought of revenge, of hurting Ryan by giving myself to someone else, flickered through my intoxicated mind. It was a chaotic cocktail of pain, anger, and self-destruction. He held me, yes, but with a supportive tenderness, not a predatory grip. He gently guided me to his worn couch, got me a glass of water, and sat patiently as my slurred words tumbled out, a chaotic mess of betrayal and despair. When I tried to lean in closer, to press my lips against his, seeking that desperate oblivion, he gently, respectfully pulled back. His words, soft yet resolute, cut through the haze of my intoxication, piercing the fog of my despair like a laser beam. "Emily," he said, his voice steady, unwavering, "you deserve better. You deserve love born from clarity, not pain. Not tonight. I want you, but only when you want me, for me, not for escape." His refusal, though painful in that moment of raw, aching need, was the first true act of respect I had received in years. It wasn't about what he wanted, but what I truly needed, even if I couldn't articulate it then. It was a lifeline pulling me back from the brink, forcing me to confront my own brokenness, not escape it. It forced me to choose myself even when I felt I had nothing left to choose, when the world had convinced me I was nothing. He didn't exploit my weakness. He honored my potential strength. That night I slept on his couch, wrapped in a blanket he'd given me, the quiet hum of his small apartment, a stark contrast to the echoing emptiness of my own home, a safe harbor in a raging storm. His words and his unwavering belief in my inherent worth became the catalyst for my slow, arduous recovery. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, a dramatic movie moment where everything clicked into place. It was a gradual, agonizing climb out of the abyss. The hangover the next morning was brutal, but the clarity that followed was even more so. I began to heal, not just from Ryan's betrayal, but from the years of self-neglect and emotional abuse, the subtle erosion of my self-esteem. I started to piece together the fragments of myself, one painful step at a time, like reassembling a shattered mosaic, each chip representing a memory, a lost part of me, patiently, carefully. I sought professional help, found a therapist who listened without judgment, who helped me untangle the knots of Ryan's gaslighting, who validated my reality. She told me I wasn't crazy, that what I experienced was a classic pattern of abuse. That validation, that simple confirmation that my perceptions were real, was like a cool balm on an open wound. As my mind cleared, as my emotional strength slowly returned, a cold, calculated resolve began to form within me. The despair receded, replaced by a steely, quiet determination. I would not be broken. I would not be silenced. I would not let him win. I pictured his smug face, his condescending smile, the ease with which he had tried to erase me, and a fierce, righteous anger simmered beneath the surface. This wasn't about revenge in the explosive, dramatic sense. This was about justice. This was about him paying for what he had done, not just to me, but to everyone he had manipulated. My plan was to dismantle him piece by piece, just as he had tried to dismantle me. Let me rewind a little to give you a clearer picture of the man who tried to erase me. I'm Emily, 33, an office worker. My husband, Ryan, 36, was a successful businessman, handsome, charming, universally adored by our families and friends. From the outside, our marriage was a portrait of stability, a perfectly curated social media feed of happiness. He was the kind of man who commanded a room without raising his voice, whose charisma was a tangible force, drawing people in, making them feel seen, special. He was the golden boy, and I, his seemingly contented wife, the perfect complement to his carefully constructed image. But behind the perfectly manicured lawn and the designer clothes, our marriage was a beautiful facade, toxic to its core. Ryan was a master of control, his grip subtle, almost imperceptible. He controlled our finances with an iron fist, his excuse always being his business acumen and my supposed lack of it. Every purchase, every bill, every household budget was meticulously managed by him. I'd ask about investments, about savings, about anything really, and he'd brush me off with a patronizing smile. "Don't worry your pretty head about it, Em, I've got it handled. Just enjoy your life." It wasn't about protecting me. It was about keeping me dependent, keeping me in the dark. My own bank account was barely more than an allowance, just enough for groceries and essentials, while his grew exponentially, a secret garden I wasn't allowed to enter. His words were always silk, always smooth, laced with a subtle venom that twisted your thoughts without leaving a mark. He had a way of praising you while simultaneously diminishing you. "You look lovely today, darling, but maybe that dress isn't quite right for your figure now." Or, if I dared to voice an opinion that differed from his, "Oh, Emily, you're so emotional. You really need to think things through logically like I do." He could make you doubt your own memories, your own feelings, your own sanity, all with a concerned look and a gentle tone. I'd argue a point and he'd respond with a carefully constructed narrative that made my own argument sound absurd, even to me. "No, Emily, I distinctly remember saying we go to my mother's." "You must be mistaken. Are you getting enough sleep? You seem a little scattered lately." And because I loved him, because I trusted him, because he was so believable, I'd always end up apologizing, convinced I was the one who was wrong or overly sensitive or just plain forgetting things. The bars of my gilded cage weren't visible, but they were there, tightening with each passing year, each subtle dismissal, each veiled criticism slowly and perceptibly losing my song, my voice, my very essence. The constant invalidation left me feeling perpetually off-kilter, questioning every instinct, every emotion. The rifts were simmering insidious beneath the surface of our picture-perfect life. The unraveling, as it often does in lives that appear so perfectly woven, began subtly in an unexpected place, a small, unassuming coffee shop near our home. It was my quiet escape, a sanctuary from the suffocating grandeur of my life, a place where I could pretend for a few precious moments to be just Emily, not Mrs. Ryan Thorne. I longed for anonymity, for a space where I didn't have to perform the role of the perfect wife. One crisp autumn morning, the air carrying the scent of fallen leaves and fresh coffee, a familiar ritual was disrupted. I saw something that ignited a furious indignation within me. A young man, Jamal, barely 23, was lingering by the alley behind the shop, seemingly harassing the scruffy stray cats that congregated there, their thin bodies huddled together against the chill. Or so I thought. His movements were abrupt, almost aggressive, his voice low and guttural, and the cats scattered at his approach, their tails tucked, their eyes wide with what I perceived as fear. The sight of their distress, coupled with the simmering frustrations of my own life, the unacknowledged helplessness I felt trapped in my marriage, flared into a righteous anger. I saw cruelty blatant and undeniable, and I reacted with the swift, unthinking indignation of someone who believed they were doing good, finally able to exert some form of control, even if it was over a situation that was not my own. I rushed home, my fingers trembling with a mixture of anger and self-righteousness, as I typed a scathing post on the local residents' forum. My heart pounded with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I detailed what I'd seen, painting Jamal as a heartless youth, a menace to the vulnerable creatures, a blight on our otherwise pristine neighborhood. I described the filthy, crying cats, the aggressive movements, the perceived fear in their eyes. The internet, as it tends to do, amplified my outrage, turning a personal observation into a public spectacle. A wave of condemnation crashed down on Jamal in the coffee shop. People I knew, people I didn't, joined the chorus of criticism, their virtual pitchforks raised high, their comments echoing my own fury. Animal abuser. Disgusting. Shame on that cafe for employing him. The cafe, once bustling, saw its customers abandon it in droves, a palpable hit to their business. I felt a perverse sense of satisfaction, a fleeting moment of power in a life where I felt increasingly powerless, a brief illusion of control over something, anything. I was Emily the protector, the voice of the voiceless. Or so I told myself, clinging to that fragile sense of righteous authority. But then the universe, in its infinite wisdom, decided to humble me. It has a way of doing that, doesn't it? When you're so convinced of your own righteousness, life has a habit of pulling the rug out from under you. A few days later, just as I was leaving the coffee shop head down, feeling a strange mix of lingering triumph and unease, Jamal approached me. His presence was quiet, almost hesitant, a stark contrast to the storm I had conjured. I braced myself for an explosion, for anger, for accusations. But his eyes, surprisingly gentle despite the public outcry I had instigated, held a quiet sadness, a depth that belied his youth. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he didn't even seem angry. He simply spoke, his voice low and steady, cutting through my assumptions like a sharp knife. "Emily," he began, his tone respectful, almost apologetic. "I heard what you wrote about the cats." My stomach clenched. "Yes," I said, my voice defensive, though my conviction was already beginning to waver in the face of his calm demeanor. "I saw what you were doing. It was appalling." He didn't argue. He simply explained, his words slow, and measured each one a hammer blow against the edifice of my self-righteousness. He told me he wasn't abusing the cats. He was caring for them. He was feeding them with food he bought with his own meager money, a silent testament to his compassion. He nursed their wounds with antiseptic he carried in his worn backpack, patching up their scrapes and infections. He spent hours tirelessly trying to find them homes, a safe haven from the harsh streets, knocking on doors, calling shelters. "I know what it's like to be abandoned," he explained, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. "I grew up in an orphanage. No family, no one to care if you were hungry, if you were alone. I understand what it feels like to be utterly dependent on the kindness of strangers, or the lack thereof." He was using his meager earnings from his part-time job at the coffee shop, a job that barely covered his own necessities, to ensure these forgotten creatures had a glimmer of hope. He showed me photos on his phone, cats he had found homes for, before and after pictures of their transformations from scrawny strays to healthy loved pets. He spoke of their names, their personalities, the small victories he cherished. The shame that washed over me was immediate and overwhelming, a cold, bitter wave that left me gasping for air. It was a truly humbling experience, a gut-wrenching realization of my own colossal error. My face burned with embarrassment, a hot flush that spread from my neck to my hairline, but beneath it a different emotion began to stir, a profound sense of empathy, a recognition of shared vulnerability, and then, surprisingly, a burgeoning admiration. This young man with so little was giving so much, pouring his heart and meager resources into creatures society had discarded. He was a stark contrast to the hollow abundance of my own life, to the carefully curated image of success that masked so much emptiness. He possessed a richness of spirit that my privileged world often lacked, a genuine kindness that shone like a beacon in my increasingly dark existence. We started talking after that first tentatively, with the awkwardness of two people who had met under such fraught circumstances. I offered a mumbled apology, which he accepted with a quiet nod, no hint of resentment in his eyes. Then slowly, with a growing ease that surprised us both, our conversations deepened. He listened, truly listened, to my rambling anxieties about my marriage, my loneliness, my growing sense of suffocation. He never judged, never offered platitudes, never tried to fix me. He simply acknowledged my pain, a rare and precious gift in a world where my emotions were constantly dismissed, where my every concern was brushed aside by Ryan as overthinking or being dramatic. Jamal didn't just listen, he observed. He noticed the subtle shift in my demeanor, the weariness in my eyes that even I tried to hide. He would offer small, meaningful gestures, a perfectly brewed coffee waiting for me when I arrived, remembering my order without me saying a word. A small, hand-drawn sketch of one of his rescued cats tucked into my usual takeaway bag, a silent message of warmth. He once gave me a tiny, smooth river stone he'd found, telling me it was for grounding, for when I felt overwhelmed. "It's just a rock, Emily," he'd said with a gentle smile. "But sometimes holding something solid can help you remember what's real." These weren't grand, expensive gifts like Ryan would give. Always a diamond, a designer bag, something to show off. But quiet, thoughtful tokens that spoke directly to my soul, to the person I was not, the image I had to project. He encouraged me to care for myself, to take breaks, to find moments of peace. "You look tired, Emily?" He'd say, a genuine concern in his voice. "Make sure you rest. You deserve it." No one had said that to me in years. Despite the significant age gap, a chasm that would normally preclude such a connection, Jamal treated me with an unwavering respect that Ryan had long since abandoned. Ryan saw me as an extension of his ego, a decorative accessory, a possession, to be polished and displayed. Jamal saw me as a person with thoughts, feelings, and a quiet desperation. He understood the profound emptiness that had taken root in my increasingly cold marriage, an emptiness Ryan either couldn't or wouldn't see, or perhaps simply didn't care to acknowledge. He filled a void I hadn't even realized was there, simply by being present, by being kind, by offering genuine connection. He became my confidant, my anchor in a sea of emotional turmoil, a quiet port in the storm. I was deeply drawn to him, to his quiet strength and profound empathy. My heart, long dormant, began to stir with an unfamiliar warmth, a flicker of something akin to hope. But I always maintained a boundary, a wall built of guilt and responsibility. The thought of my young child, the weight of societal expectations, the fear of public scandal, they all kept me grounded, reminding me of the life I was still bound to, the reputation I still needed to protect. I clung to the idea that I was merely seeking solace, a friend in my despair, nothing more. I told myself I was strong, that I could handle this, that I wouldn't succumb to a reckless impulse. His words and his unwavering belief in my inherent worth became the catalyst for my slow, arduous recovery. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, a dramatic movie moment where everything clicked into place. It was a gradual, agonizing climb out of the abyss. The hangover the next morning was brutal, but the clarity that followed was even more so. I began to heal not just from Ryan's betrayal, but from the years of self-neglect and emotional abuse, the subtle erosion of my self-esteem. I started to piece together the fragments of myself one painful step at a time, like reassembling a shattered mosaic, each chip representing a memory, a lost part of me, patiently, carefully. I sought professional help, found a therapist who listened without judgment, who helped me untangle the knots of Ryan's gaslighting, who validated my reality. She told me I wasn't crazy, that what I experienced was a classic pattern of abuse. That validation, that simple confirmation that my perceptions were real, was like a cool balm on an open wound. As my mind cleared, as my emotional strength slowly returned, a cold, calculated resolve began to form within me. The despair receded, replaced by a steely, quiet determination. I would not be broken. I would not be silenced. I would not let him win. I pictured his smug face, his condescending smile, the ease with which he had tried to erase me, and a fierce, righteous anger simmered beneath the surface. This wasn't about revenge in the explosive, dramatic sense. This was about justice. This was about him paying for what he had done, not just to me, but to everyone he had manipulated. My plan was to dismantle him piece by piece, just as he had tried to dismantle me. I began to investigate quietly, meticulously, with the precision of a surgeon. I became a ghost in my own home, moving silently, observing everything. Every casual remark Ryan had made, every seemingly innocent document left on his desk, every fleeting interaction on his phone became a clue, a thread in a tangled web. I started with his schedule, cross-referencing it with credit card statements I managed to sneak glimpses of, and the strange, vague excuses he'd offer for his disappearances. I secretly downloaded his phone data, looking for unusual contacts, suspicious messages, anything that didn't fit. I sifted through old emails on our shared family computer bank statements he thought were safely hidden phone records I accessed through old bills under the guise of organizing. It was painstaking work hours spent in the dead of night after my child was asleep, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and grim satisfaction. Each small clue, each overheard conversation, each seemingly insignificant detail became a thread in the intricate tapestry of Ryan's deceit. I discovered not just his infidelity, that was just the tip of the iceberg, but a vast, sprawling web of lies, financial improprieties, and other illicit affairs that went far beyond what I had initially imagined. There were multiple women, some colleagues, some clients, some I didn't recognize from any social circle. There were hotel bills in cities he claimed to be on solo business trips, extravagant gifts charged to company accounts, even coded messages that spoke of shady business dealings and secret investments hinting at money laundering or worse. It was a dark, ugly picture, a portrait of a man utterly devoid of empathy, whose entire life was a carefully constructed deception. But seeing it clearly without the filter of my own emotional turmoil, without the fog of his manipulation, empowered me. It gave me a weapon not of revenge in the emotional sense, but of truth. Irrefutable, undeniable truth. I didn't confront him directly. There was no need for a dramatic showdown, no satisfaction to be gained from his public humiliation at my hands. That would only feed his narcissistic need for attention, even negative attention. My revenge would be far more insidious, far more devastating, because it would come from within his own meticulously built world. Instead, I gathered all the evidence. Every damning photo, every incriminating video, every meticulously documented text message, every bank statement, every hidden email. Shreds of proof that would demolish his carefully crafted image from the inside out. I compiled it all into anonymous packages, creating multiple copies, making sure no digital trace led back to me. Then I sent them. Not to the media, not to the police, not to his immediate colleagues. That would be too public, too direct. I sent them to his various paramours, the women he'd been stringing along with promises and lies, and more importantly, to their unsuspecting spouses. I knew enough about the circles Ryan moved in, about the unspoken rules of their world, to understand the devastating impact this information would have. I meticulously tracked down their addresses, their partners' names, cross-referencing information from his phone, old contacts, and even public social media profiles. It felt cold surgical but necessary. One of these individuals, it turned out, was the girlfriend of a deeply connected, powerful figure in the shadowy world of underground finance, a man who operated outside the boundaries of polite society, where reputation was everything, where trust was currency, and where secrets once exposed were deadly. This man wasn't just a businessman. He was a silent force, his influence stretching into areas where the law blurred and personal honor was enforced with ruthless efficiency. Ryan, in his arrogance, had entangled himself with the wrong people, and my meticulously gathered evidence had just pulled back the curtain on his deceptions to the one person who could make his world vanish. I didn't have to lift another finger. The consequences of his actions, now exposed to those with far more power and influence than I possessed, began to unravel his carefully constructed life with a terrifying speed. The financial irregularities I had uncovered, the illicit dealings he thought were hidden, were now laid bare to someone who understood their implications far better than I ever could. Ryan's career imploded not with a bang, not with a public scandal that would be swiftly forgotten, but with a whimper, a slow, agonizing suffocation. He was ostracized from the business world. He had so meticulously cultivated his reputation in tatters, his connections severed. He was blacklisted, quietly and efficiently, from every reputable venture. His assets were frozen, his accounts drained by unforeseen circumstances, orchestrated from the shadows. The pressure became unbearable, a silent, relentless pursuit, by forces unseen, forces that didn't leave fingerprints. He was forced to flee the city under a silent, relentless pressure that I, Emily, had merely set in motion, a karmic reckoning that required no further intervention from me. The justice I sought wasn't a public spectacle. It was a quiet, devastating implosion, a dismantling of his entire world from within. He vanished, leaving no trace, a ghost in the city he once commanded, a man swallowed by his own lies. Years have passed since then. My child is grown with a life and family of their own, thriving oblivious to the quiet storm that once raged around us. The immediate aftermath of Ryan's disappearance was tumultuous, but the truth, once it began to surface, albeit indirectly, slowly began to reshape perceptions. My therapist helped me navigate the messy divorce proceedings, the financial fallout, and the lingering emotional scars. Life is quieter now, more peaceful, but also filled with a profound sense of self-awareness. Many have sought to enter my life to fill the space that Ryan once occupied, or the space that Jamal, in his quiet, steadfast way, never fully claimed. Some were well-meaning, some opportunistic, some genuinely intrigued by the woman who had survived such a storm. But I am not the same woman. The scars remain deeply etched into my soul, but they are no longer open wounds. They are reminders of battles fought and won, of lessons learned, of strength discovered. I no longer open my heart with the same reckless abandon, the same desperate need for external validation, the same naive belief in grand gestures. I am more guarded, more discerning, more fiercely protective of my inner peace, of the fragile self I rebuilt from the ashes. I observe, I analyze, I look for inconsistencies, for the subtle signs of manipulation that once blinded me. My intuition, long suppressed, is now my sharpest tool. Jamal, now a successful architect, a man of quiet strength and profound integrity, remains a constant, quiet presence in my life. He is my steadfast friend, my confidant, my soulmate, in a way that transcends conventional romance, a bond forged in shared vulnerability and unwavering respect. He never pushed, never demanded, never tried to define our relationship by societal norms. He simply waited and continued to be the kind, respectful man he always was, a beacon of light in my darkest hours. He understands the space I need, the time it takes to truly heal and trust again. And now, after all these years, after falling to the very bottom and clawing my way back, after learning the painful lessons of self-worth and genuine connection, I am finally ready to choose. Not out of desperation, not out of loneliness, not out of a need to fill a void, but with the clear-eyed wisdom of a woman who has learned to love herself truly, deeply, and rationally. I want to observe more, to ensure that any connection I forge now is built on a foundation of clarity and genuine mutual respect, not on the remnants of past trauma or a desperate need for a savior. The healing I've learned truly begins when you dare to release the fear of being alone, when you embrace your own company, and when you learn to love yourself with a steady, unwavering reason, a love that is not dependent on anyone else, a love that simply is. It's a love that acknowledges the past, but lives firmly in the present, always looking forward with quiet strength. My journey has been one of profound loss and even more profound discovery. It wasn't a fairy tale ending wrapped up neatly with a bow, where a new love immediately sweeps away all the pain. It was real. It was messy, painful, and ultimately transformative. It was the story of a woman who found her voice in the silence, her strength in her vulnerability, and her path in the darkest of times. The echoes of betrayal still linger, a faint hum beneath the surface, but they no longer define me. They simply remind me of how far I've come. If you've walked a similar path, if you've felt the sting of betrayal or the suffocating grip of manipulation, know that you are not alone. Your story, like mine, holds power, holds lessons, and holds the potential for profound healing. This is Emily from Infidelity Love Lies. What did you learn from your own storms? How did you find your way back to yourself? Share your reflections in the comments below.